the counselor to be able to give some sort of context to what the discipline violation might be, because there are sometimes those one infraction-related disciplinary consequences that don't have the kind of severity that sometimes it might look like if you just check off, yes, I've been suspended. So it gives a context, it gives the guidance counselor an opportunity to support the student's application.
Okay, in the guidance department, and a question from a college or university, if the student does not give their consent, would not be able to report any type of a violation.
Right.
That's my
They would just
understanding, right?
They would just answer neither in the affirmative or the negative.
Correct.
In that case. Okay.
Is that new, or is that always been in our policy?
It's always been the guidance department's practice to encourage the student to answer honestly.
Okay.
That's how I would word it to you. Those are the words we use when students
It's a
ask.
sensitive area, and
It is.
It's misconceived sometimes too, because I know that one of the things that when a student is disciplined that results in a suspension or anything like that, you know, the first thing the parents will ask is, well, is this going to follow him throughout his high school career? Is it going to follow him to college? And sometimes the answer that they get, and it's not necessarily from the person that should be given the answer, is, oh, no, that's not going to go anywhere else. We won't report it. But the problem is the student's going to be asked, and he has to essentially report it. So it's just an area that's, you know, I deal with it quite a bit, and I think I can give a better answer now that I've seen this policy, actually.
Good.
So, okay.
Let's see, if we go through a little bit to the section on school functions, I'm on page, what is labeled here as page 41. I would just like to, I made some structural changes to item M around student dances and proms, and the types of screening that may be conducted of students, particularly around alcohol and or drug suspicion, and how students might be affected if they are determined to be, unfortunately, either under the influence or in possession of alcohol or drugs. This is an existing policy, but I just made some language changes, and I thought because of the subject that it probably was smart to bring it before you. I don't know that it really changes anything. It just, I think, brings a little bit more clarity to it.
Anybody have comments
I have a comment.
before I go?
You have on the bottom of page 41, the first part says, is otherwise a term be under the influence of or in possession of drugs or alcohol, 20 school-sponsored function following the last official day of school for seniors will not be permitted. Then 3 lines down, it says, additionally, any senior student who is suspended from school for a period that extends up to graduation may be prevented. So I'm wondering, we have a definitive in that they will not, and then later on we say they may not, may be prevented. So should we be consistent there? And I guess I have a problem with the will.
I do too.
I'm going to disagree with Jerry. I don't have a problem if a kid reads this policy, violates this policy, and the kid's prevented from graduating. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with saying will rather than may.
Okay.
I think Jerry's going to argue opposite of me.
No, I mean, my preference on this would be that, again, that both include may, which
Okay.
gives some discretion to
Right. That's what
the principal.
I'm
Okay.
recommending also.
Because there are two different things here. One talks about a suspension, and then that even though they're on suspension, from the way I'm reading it, it says they may be prevented from participating. It doesn't say they shall be or
Right.
will be.
Right.
But if they were a senior is in violation of one of the above categories, they will not be permitted to attend graduation. So there seems to be no discretion left there whatsoever. So I guess my recommendation would be leave it in the discretion of the principal.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
put may not be permitted to attend any rate, which to me leaves at least some discretionary.
I have no problem with that. If I could, I just want to explain to you why I used the language I did. The second part is, it is possible that a student could be suspended while the school is still in session for that senior.
Right.
But the suspension, if it's an infraction that, say, was a 6-day suspension, but there were only 3 days of school left, if they went 3 more days of what would be considered to be school days, but even though they did not have
Right.
school, they may be prevented from certain activities if they fell within that window of suspension time. That was what I was trying to
But
achieve.
if that's what you're trying to say, then there's a possibility there could be a longer suspension.
There
that
is.
could carry through a 10-day or a
Could.
15-day
Yes, it
extension.
could.
That could carry right through the entire proceeding. So, again, I'm trying to leave it, and if that was your intent clearly was to to make it a hard and fast rule that they will not be permitted to attend either.
No, I'm okay with
activities
May.
Okay.
I am.
Because here's the problem I have. If something like this occurs, and I think we can fall back on some experience now, there is really no time for any type of an appeal or any type of an opportunity to exercise any due process whatsoever. I mean, it happens. It could happen the day before graduation. It could happen 2 days before graduation, and it doesn't afford anybody the opportunity to be heard, other than the initial confrontation.
The initial hearing with me.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that part of it that is the existing language. It has been will not.
Yeah.
But the may came in only because I added about the second feature,
Yeah.
but I'm okay with.
I mean, I'd like to put it, again, and just my recommendation, obviously the committee has to decide, but I'd like to put may not be permitted to attend any remaining school-sponsored functions up to and including the graduation ceremony, and leave the may in the second sentence as well. I don't know how
Somebody
it-
can argue their way out of it.
Well, I just see situations as differing in degree and severity, and I think I'm willing to leave it in the discretion of the principal and the superintendent, as opposed to having a hard and fast rule that they will not be permitted to graduate. Graduation, to me, is something where the discipline, by not allowing a student to graduate, has collateral damage, and that collateral damage is the family. I mean, it's shattering to the family to have the student not graduate, even though they violated a rule. I'm not suggesting they should be allowed to get away with it, but I think there are other ways to discipline that student, punish that student, make that student pay for whatever offenses that he committed.
How?
So,
Not
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
agree
I
with
think
that.
there is at that time. I mean, and again, I'm looking to leave some discretion with the principal.
No, do.
I just think kids don't know these rules by now. I have no sympathy for them, and I think it would have to be an extreme case. But if I would support banning kids from graduating if they violated these conditions that are set down here in the handbook. That's all. Because if we don't, then there's nothing. These kids basically would say, "I can get away with this," and I guess that's my problem with it.
When do they have to obey the rules?
They always have to obey the rules, Cliff.
No.
And you misinterpret
No.
all the time when we go through this, that I'm suggesting there aren't any repercussions to their behavior. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, based on the behavior, leave the repercussions up to the discretion of the principal. I'm not suggesting they don't have to obey rules. I'm not suggesting that if they don't obey the rules, there's no consequences. I'm simply saying at that point of time in the year in particular, there is little or no recourse for the student to be heard and to have their case presented in a way where they're being afforded an impartial hearing. That's all.
And that part I agree with, because there's no, if it happens the day before, and you have to make a pretty quick judgment on something, there's no chance for that kid or that family to get any kind of hearing or appeal. So that part I agree with, but I think the principal has to have the ability, if the evidence is, is
Well, the principal has the ability now. I'm just saying, leave the discretion with the principal.
I think we're confusing two different things, because I'm hearing you, Jerry, about needing to have some time to, have due process, and for the families and the student to have some process where they have, they can appeal this, so that whatever the decision is. And I also hear the argument that there's discretion given to the principal. Now, I'm firmly believing in that we should give the principal discretion, and his committee members stay out of it unless there's an appeal. But the appeal doesn't come to us, it goes to the superintendent, according to our policy.
Yeah, and
Right.
Karen, I'm not trying to put in an appeal process for last-minute appeals of
I understand
disciplinary actions. I'm trying to say that all things considered, under the circumstances, that the principal retains the discretion as to whether or not the student's going to be allowed to participate in the activities up to and including graduation. That's all I'm saying. I'm
Right,
not
but
saying that he
you're-
can't, I'm saying that he has the discretion.
I understand that, but if there is no, to me, the argument that, there's collateral damage, I just don't wanna see the school committee get involved in these discussions at all. And I don't think that's our role. And, you know, I just don't see that being our
Well,
role.
that's another whole issue as to whether
We've
the school
set the
committee gets
policy,
involved.
this fits within the policy. Our policy is to give the discretion to the principal.
Well, that's all I'm suggesting.
And I'm fine with the may and may. What I wanna make sure though, John, is that you have enough tools to do what you need to do in these situations. Is that enough? Is this too loophole-y for you?
No, I don't think it is. Honestly, I prefer may, because throughout the handbook, and in my, experience, we have all worked around extenuating circumstances, and we've used those words throughout the handbook and throughout our decision-making. I think I prefer to have the discretion. Will is in there because it was in the existing language in the handbook, that's all. The new section with the may is something I added for this discussion tonight. So personally, I'm fine with the may. I mean, may can be will,
Right.
but it doesn't have to be will, so.
Then I'm satisfied.
Okay, and under paragraph H, I'm gonna go back to, again, the same argument I've made for years, that, students must be present in school on the day of a function. Now, John, I know you define functions, a dance is considered a function. And that H comes under dances, so I'm not sure if that refers to all functions or not, but at least in the context.
I will
this
never have a Saturday function, I can tell you.
Well, again, I'm just looking at it. If it's a weekend function, the student must be in school on the day prior to the function. I'm still not sure that I understand why that's necessary.
This is different though than the athletic thing, I think, which we changed last year, correct?
We did.
This refers only to school functions, so we changed that other one. This is mainly for dances and,
Yeah, that's all it's for.
Well, it comes under dances. It
It's
comes
under
under
the
that
okay.
heading.
definition, yeah.
It actually comes under that heading.
all right, and.
But again, I'm still not sure that I understand why, that if you're absent from school on a Thursday, that you couldn't participate in come to a dance. I'm sorry, if you were out of school on a Friday, why you couldn't come to something on a Saturday or a Sunday, so.
I can give you my answer. My answer is that we have you in school. You are under our supervision for that day, and it encourages your attendance for that day. That's all. Nothing more.
Okay, any further discussion?
I have one. We release, if we find that a student is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, we make sure that through the second screening that there wasn't a mouthwash, and we have identified that. We release that student to their parents. Why do we not release that student to the police? Aren't we like a mandated reporter or something?
Well, the police would be notified. They would be there. They would be part of that. They would be part of that. We have a police detail at the function, at the dance, or at the prom. So they would be part of that discussion.
They'd be a part of the discussion.
Yeah, I think that, in all honesty, Cliff, it's really, I think police departments tend to like to allow this, depending on the severity of things. I mean, if it's as you just explained it, I think that they often will allow the courtesy of the school the school official to handle it, that it becomes a school matter.
As far as being under the influence, they have no more authority to do anything than the school does, and that is to call the parents, because it's not a crime for them to be under the influence.
Just in possession.
In possession, yes,
yeah.
but under the influence, no. So the point I'm trying to make is in all likelihood, the police would probably call the parents and say, come and get your kid, which is the exact same
Yeah,
thing that
if,
the school's gonna do.
I've never been in a situation where I haven't been able to reach a parent. Sometimes it takes a little doing, to get a hold of them, but, that's not been a problem. I mean, in a case like that, if I was never able to reach the parent, I may have to
And
reach
if they're
them
in
to the police
possession of
station.
alcohol, it's a
Right.
criminal offense.
Or if they're driving,
If they're impaired and they're
Impaired
driving, it's a
driving,
criminal
right.
offense, yeah.
but, right.
Okay, any further discussion on the proposed handbook changes?
I have a couple.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
On page 51, just, with the new laws around head injury, I thought it was important to put the language of the state law on head injury, concussion and such, and also just a little statement at the end about, as you might remember last year, we were using the Think Ahead program that worked very well with our students. We will continue that this year again.
I think the Bruins have completely undone all of that.
Yeah, I know it. That's exactly right, yeah. The last thing is, on page 53, around the athletic user fee. I would like to have some language that just clarifies, it strengthens